This is the Culture Study Podcast, and I'm Anne Helen Peterson.
And I'm Carrie Howley, a staff writer at New York Magazine. I recently wrote the piece, Could the Girls of Camp Mystic Have Been Saved?
So today we are talking about summer camp, and we're talking specifically about sleepaway camps that are a culture unto themselves, that are credited with identity formation, rites of passage, lifelong communities. And we're going to start by talking about Camp Mystic, a private Christian summer camp for girls about an hour southwest of Austin, Texas. Most of you, if you're listening, you know the name Camp Mystic and you know about what happened last year, but we're going to get into that gradually. So Carrie, how would you describe Camp Mystic before? Like, how is it understood? How did people talk about it? Like, how did it live in the imagination, the popular imagination of people in Texas before last July 4th?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I first heard about Camp Mystic, like a lot of people, what I heard was that it was a Christian, largely white or entirely white camp for girls of means, and that it was a legacy camp. All of these things are true, but it was really interesting to talk to people who went to surrounding camps and ask them about Mystic.
Right.
Because it actually isn't like the Lux camp. That's a camp called Camp Valdemar.
Yeah.
And, you know, it is not the most rustic camp, but it's one of the more rustic camps. There wasn't AC in the cabins, for instance.
Yep.
But what I heard again and again was this is a camp that is especially associated with a sense of Christian innocence and wonder and simplicity.
And there are a whole bunch of camps that are in the hill country of Texas, which is this area outside of Austin. I lived in Austin for 4 years, getting my PhD. And like we would sometimes go there on the weekends. It's like one of the places that has the most population influx currently of people moving to Texas. There's a lot of retirees who live there now, but I think it's also like this idyllic escape from the city, whether that city is Austin or San Antonio or Houston or Dallas. And that I just didn't understand that there were so many camps there.
Yeah, like the post office was mostly dealing with camp mail to home. It's like, basically, that's what the town is doing. It's facilitating camps. And then those camps, as you know, go on to become something people identify with for the rest of their lives.
Yes.
I'm a Longhorn person, or I'm a Mystic person. It was a kind of identity formation that I, as someone who never went to camp, was not familiar with at all.
Yeah, we should situate ourselves as camp or non-camp people. So I grew up going to camp starting in second grade. I loved camp because I lived in northern Idaho and summers were like endless and boring, and all I wanted to do was like go stay in a cabin. And then I mostly went to church camps that were founded and run by the Northwest Presbyterian Association, the Presbytery, that were very rustic. Like we're talking, I think that tuition for a week was somewhere around like $80.
Wow.
And if you couldn't pay, like whatever, the church would pay for it. Like if you wanted to go to camp, you could go to camp. And I became a counselor there. While I was also going to those camps, I also went to other camps. So I would go to science camp and math camp. And then starting when I was in seventh grade, I would go to French camp, French immersion camp. At first in the San Juan Islands, there's a whole island that's just a French immersion camp. And then I would go to someplace that will be familiar for anyone who's from Minnesota or the Midwest, called Concordia Language Villages, where you go for a month and you get high school credit, but like same sort of like some of the rituals that I hear described about like Camp Mystic, but also some of the camps out east, or some of the more popular like Jewish camps in California and out east. Like when you're there for that long, there are these rituals and these parts of your identity that become associated with the camp.
Is there a particular camp that you now find yourself associating with?
I still think of myself as someone who went to the Presbyterian camp that I went to and worked to is Camp Spalding. And there's like I have very strong feelings about what has happened to that camp. Like it's gotten fancy and that offends me, which is silly, right? I am no longer Presbyterian or a Christian. So I have like complicated feelings about that. But like if someone brought up our rival camp, like I would talk some shit, right? Like still today, those sorts of like ingrained things.
That makes sense.
I do meet people all the time who say like, there seems to be this divide between like, I was a person who went to camp or I wasn't a person who went to camp. And we see that in the questions as we go on. I went to camp because when I was bored, and then now that I realize it, like my mom, I wasn't forced to work during my summers. All of my other friends had work for pay. And that was not something that my mom was like, I want you to do stuff to get out of this town, essentially. And it allowed me to meet people from all over the place and to really experience a lot. And I loved it. And whenever parents today are asking, you know, should I send my kid to summer camp, especially, you know, like a cheap YMCA camp, I'm like, absolutely. It was my favorite thing in the world. But I think what we're talking about here is another level because the parents become so invested in their kids' identity at camp and their kids' experience at camp.
Yes. I did not go to camp. My parents were basically too cheap to send me to camp. And so it just hadn't been something that I thought about. I think about it as a parent. Like I love to send my kids have so many like useless skills that they've picked up at like random camps I've sent them to in my college town. Right. You know, I'll be like, yeah, you should learn to like do paper making with recycled materials this week. And they're like, okay. Yes. But like sleepaway camp is not something I'd considered. And I don't think I really understood what I had missed by not going to camp until, it sounds crazy, but until spending 6 months writing this piece.
Wow.
And hearing the intensity of women's experience and their memories and to the extent where it could feel very melancholy in terms of like life really never lived up again to those 6 weeks I spent at camp.
Yeah. And I think like when you do it every year and you see the same people every year, like it comes to feel like this place that like where you really get to be yourself maybe too.
Yes. And someone I spoke to who had attended a neighboring camp made the point that all of us feel so alienated from land.
Yeah.
And there's this deep connection to the land, the lake you return to every summer.
Yep.
You feel a connection that you don't feel to any other piece of land on earth.
Yeah. Sometimes there will be a smell that I like encounter in the summer here. So my camp was in Eastern Washington where you just get this like this dryness in the late summer. It's like a crackling of the evergreens. And it brings me straight back to like walking one of the like crappy trails around camp and like feeling like there was nothing save the present, right? I had no worries. I was just there. There were boys there though. And that's a difference, I think, too, with Camp Mystic.
Yeah, I mean, Camp Mystic definitely, especially being situated in Texas, I think has this aspect of this is a place where girls' activities mattered and they weren't subsumed to boys' activities.
Yeah.
And a lot of people told me that. Like you could be openly competitive in a way that might be frowned upon in school.
That's so interesting, right? Because in some ways it's this place where like pure girlhood can exist, but at the same time where you can be ambitious in a way that like you're socially conditioned not to be in more public spaces. Basically.
Yeah, and of course you can shed the person you are at school and start over and the gates close. And now I'm this person this summer.
Did they have full-time uniforms or just on Sundays?
Just on Sundays. They wore white for devotionals,
Vespers. In some ways, like it's a Christian camp almost in quotes. It's not associated with any church, right? Camp Mystic, right? But in some ways, some of the rituals that they did were way more, and some of the language that they use about the camp is more Christian than anything I encountered at my like very Presbyterian camp.
Yeah, it wasn't a Christianity that I had encountered before. I keep saying that, but I grew up in New England with this very like sanctimonious Catholicism. Yeah. And a lot of the verbiage and the action around that way of being was about good works and devoting yourself to people in poverty and stuff like that. And there just didn't seem to be any of that.
It's a vibe.
In the kind of,
it's a vibe.
yeah.
It's a Christian vibe.
Yeah, like it wasn't about sacrifice. It was about being kind. Like there's so much focus on being kind, but it seemed like only to each other, right? Like like within this world we've created.
We should back up and say, like, I mean, we'll say this in the intro, but you spent all this time interviewing and interviewing people who are involved with the camp and writing this piece. And I was really struck in the piece about, like, I think about 3/4 of the way down, you start asking people involved, like, what is the ministry?
Yeah. Ministry isn't a word we used a lot in New England. So I, at least in my experience of like sanctimonious New England religiosity, so I was like, the ministry, that's interesting. That to me would have been like the part where you are giving out scholarships to children who can't afford the $4,000 to come to camp. But people just seem confused when we talked about that. It was, yeah, the ministry, according to the Eastland brother I spoke to, was the activities that they do.
Well, and it's just like being a person who is a mystic person in the world. To me, it reminds me of like some messaging that I did receive as a teenager, which was like we need to show God's love through like being a cool person, essentially. Like people should be we should be magnets for the world, that people want to be like us, because if they want to be like us, then they want to be Christian. Does that make sense? I think that's their understanding.
That does make sense. Yeah. I think you get it.
Yes. Okay, so to backtrack a little, we're going to talk about Camp Mystic and about some of the discourses of camp and of girlhood and everything that's involved with it. But we want to also talk about what happened and why we're talking about Camp Mystic specifically. So for people who aren't familiar, can you give us a refresher on what happened? I still can't believe that it was on July 4th, 2025.
Yes. Early in the morning of this past July 4th, there was a historic flood in Hunt, Texas, where Mystic is located. And the camp was profoundly unprepared and delayed in evacuating girls to higher ground. And 27 of the very youngest campers, ages 8, 9, and 10, were swept to their death in the Guadalupe, which is the river that runs past the camp.
It's a remarkable piece of reporting, how you set out when the parents found out that their children were unaccounted for and what happened in the aftermath. Like, it's just absolutely gut-wrenching. It's horrible. The communication was quite poor.
It was like no one wanted to admit what was happening.
Right.
And so they were... I mean, everyone understands this when someone's communicating to you only what they absolutely need to tell you, and you know there's much more behind that.
Yeah.
That was happening to these parents about the safety of their and well-being of their children. And so, of course, the parents, they're not in Hunt, right? They're in Houston, they're in Dallas, and maybe it's not even raining where they are. They have no sense of the gravity of the flood.
Yeah.
And so they were told, you should come pick up your girls at camp. They've been unaccounted for. And these two words become incredibly fraught. What does that mean, unaccounted for? And so at first, many of the parents thought like, okay, this is just like an administrative issue. Like they just, they're just very disorganized right now. They weren't ready for this. It took so long for the parents to understand that they might not see their girls again. And where they went after they were told to come pick up their girls was 20 minutes from Camp Mystic because the roads were impassable. Yeah. And so that was something that really struck me when I went down to Texas, was like they couldn't even get close to the site of their nightmares, right? Like, of course, all you would want to do is speed off to where you thought your daughter was. Right. And they're being like corralled in this elementary school and, fed little bits of information that are just like frustratingly vague for literally days.
Yeah.
And so that experience forms a big part of the article.
How did you get some of the families to get on board with sharing their experience with you?
First, I was not ready to approach the families.
Yeah.
I felt it was too soon.
Yeah.
And I wanted to collect as much information as possible before crossing that bridge.
Yeah.
And the piece before this I had done was actually about the Pentagon. It was a profile of Pete Hegseth.
Right.
And I had to figure out how to get people in the Pentagon to talk to me, which is something I hadn't done before and not the kind of thing that I associate myself as a journalist with doing. But I managed with persistence to do that. A lot of people talk to me about the insane situation in the Pentagon with Pete Hegseth at the helm. I had much less success getting campers at Mystic to talk to me than I did with like people who work every day in the Pentagon. I could not believe the number of emails that I would send out. I was just like scouring newspapers for people who mentioned having gone to Camp Mystic.
Yeah.
People just simply, they would not acknowledge the email. They would not respond.
Yep.
To the point where you're like, am I alive? Like you like start to question your existence, you know?
Mm-hmm.
The silence around what had happened was so striking to me.
Yeah.
I did find some people, but it took so much. And people had just decided after the tragedy, we're not going to talk to outsiders. Yep. You know, I live in Iowa. I don't live in Texas. Mm-hmm. The media causes divisiveness is something that people were saying.
Yep.
There's no benefit to speaking out because most of the people who had gone to Mystic were still supporting the camp, but didn't want to offend the parents of the dead.
Yep.
So I've utterly failed at that. But it did allow time to pass. And by the time I was able to get in touch with the parents, I think that they had moved to a place of frustration from a place of pure mourning and were ready to talk to somebody, or at least some of them were.
Yeah.
And I was extremely lucky to be connected to Matthew Childress, who was just an incredible storyteller, like was just able to explain to me the experience of waiting in that elementary school to hear news of his daughter with such visual sensory detail that mostly I didn't even need to ask again, which never happens. Usually you're going back to someone and you're like, what color was it? What did she say? What did she say?
Yep.
And I didn't, with most of these parents, I didn't have to. And I think part of that was they were traumatized. Like these images are seared into their memory. It's not like they're struggling to access them. They're like horrifyingly present.
Yes. Well, and I've had similar experiences reporting on tragedy where there is this period where no one wants to talk to anyone. And then it's like, screw these people. Like someone needs to know what I experienced, what happened. And there was this real anger because it seemed like at that point, had they officially announced that they were going to open the camp again? Yeah.
They had officially announced that they were going to open the camp again. And certainly the vibe among most Mystic alum was like, let's move on. This was nobody's fault. Let's move on.
It reminds me somewhat of how people who are still very, very close to sororities and fraternities, and I've done a lot of reporting on Bama Rush and like the sororities and fraternities and some of the things that have happened there. And I also was part of a sorority, but not in a super serious way is how I would put it. So I would say I would talk to anyone about my sorority. But if you still are invested in the way that you understand that sorority, the way that it lives in your mind, or fraternity or Greek life at your school, I think there's a very particular stake involved in like not talking publicly to others about it, and also not having your name associated with that sort of discussion, because it's like you're talking essentially to an outsider. Like, this is our private business, and you are talking to someone who doesn't understand our business.
I mean, and I completely understand that. It's human, right? Like, I don't love it when people come from the outside and write about Iowa City where I live. Right. But I also think here there was this tension of like, I support the camp, but I don't want the parents to hear me talking about that.
Yeah.
So even if you're giving me the opportunity to speak anonymously, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. And we should say too that Camp Mystic has since announced that they're not opening the camp.
Yes. So they were fully planning on opening the camp. And I talked to several legislators who were like, it's definitely happening, because if the license is denied, Mystic will sue and will have grounds to sue, because if they've met the requirements from these new safety bills, they have the right to open. But what happened was there were these legislative hearings after investigations that the state had done, and those went so poorly for Camp Mystic. I mean, the Eastlands seemed very unprepared.
And the Eastlands are the people who run the camp and have historically run the camp.
The Eastlands run the camp, the surviving Eastlands. And so the Eastlands withdrew their application to open camp this summer.
What was the reason that families, the parents of these girls who lost their lives, like why didn't they want the camp to open? I know that's a complex question.
I mean, what they would tell you is that the Eastlands behaved so irresponsibly that no child will ever be safe in their care. I think it's true that the Eastlands have shown themselves to have been, I don't want to use the word negligent, that's a legal word, but to have been very careless with the lives of these children. At the same time, over the months of writing this, I felt like there was some unnamed emotion here. And I think that the camp has failed to show any sense of shame over what happened. There has always been this sense from them that this is a biblical tragedy that we have all experienced together. Dick Eastland, the camp's patriarch, died as well. And so there's the sense that like, wow, that was awful. Like, let's move on together. Whereas the parents are saying, wait, you delayed hours in evacuating our children. You had children sleeping in a floodway. You didn't have any kind of plan, and on and on and on and on. And so you have these two divergent ways of thinking. But I think just the speed with which they were ready to back to business. There was this absolute lack of, the word that comes to mind is shame, of acknowledging that you are the cause of these deaths.
Yes, the messaging really seems like this was an act of God, and we can't control God's plan. And so all we can do is like continue with our ministry, essentially.
Right. The ministry, God has called us to continue with the ministry is what they have said. And I do want to say, like, many people have said and are quoted in the piece saying that camp involves risk. And I think that's true. It's not that we want to move toward a place of safetyism where children don't encounter any risks and no camp will ever sustain any kind of injury. But I think in this case, if you look at the facts, like a regular person who is not caught up in the Mystic legacy and mystique would be appalled by the conditions that girls were thrown into on July 4th.
The detail that just sticks with me is that these cabins were in the floodplain and FEMA knew that they were in the floodplain and that the camp appealed successfully 3 times to allow them to stay in the floodplain.
Yeah, so some of the cabins were in the floodway, which is like much worse than the floodplain.
Oh.
The cabins where the girls died were actually in the floodplain, but I think that's because they were busy evacuating the girls in the floodway.
Right.
I talked to a hydrologist in the piece who's just
He's so mad.
He's so mad. He's so mad.
He's just livid. It's such a good quote.
Yeah. He was just like, these people should be in jail.
Yeah.
But also, he also said he's not sure this is that unusual.
Right.
In that, everyone knows that kids shouldn't be sleeping in a floodway. But what he said is that this knowledge collapses at the local level. Like, there's it's not illegal.
Yep. That quote, this knowledge collapses at the local level, also so stunning. Like, it just makes me think about the excuses that we make in so many different realms of our lives when it becomes something that matters to us, right?
Yes.
The Culture Study Podcast is sponsored by Wild Alaskan Company. Oh, I'm so glad that we have this ad this week because I actually just had some coho salmon from Wild Alaskan Company. So the great thing, it comes frozen, right? So you can use it whenever you want. And I love having that ability to just like have these perfect parcels of fish that I could take out. I eat an entire one because I'm a growing girl every single time that we have a meal. So Charlie and I will take out 2 for a meal. And we just made it just very simply on the grill. Charlie uses a marinade of a little bit of miso and a little bit of mustard, a little bit of soy sauce, just very mild. And then we put the grilled salmon on top of a Caesar salad. And it was so good. So good. And again, I just love being able to take out that small parcel. They defrost really quickly. So if you just think about it like the day before, then you're ready to go. Wild Alaskan Company offers the best way to get wild-caught, high-quality seafood delivered to your door on your schedule. Each Wild Alaskan box comes with individually portioned fillets. They're vacuum sealed, super easy to prep, as I've talked about, and great for any meal, no matter how quick or elevated. It's fish you can trust with no GMOs, antibiotics, or other additives. And every order supports sustainable harvesting practices and Alaskan fishermen whose history is tied to the region and practice. Wild Alaskan Company is so confident that their fish is the best that they offer 100% satisfaction and money-back guarantee, so you can try your first box risk-free. Go to wildalaskan.com/culture for $35 off your first order of premium wild-caught seafood. That's wildalaskan.com/culture for $35 off your first order. Thanks to Wild Alaskan Company for sponsoring this episode. Today's episode is brought to you by Ollie. So there is this lovely woman on the island who the other day was like, I see her with her dog all the time. The dog is so cute, looks so healthy. It's like, I don't know, just a little guy, great hair, right? You know how like you can tell when a dog has eats really nice food? Its hair is like lustrous. It has like Kardashian like shine to it. That's what this dog has. And then I just like made a little mental note. I was like, oh, that dog looks really healthy. And then a couple days later, she posted on Nextdoor about having a ton of boxes to give away. And they all were Ollie boxes.
Ollie in the wild.
I know. I was like, this pampered dog gets like a beautiful Ollie meal every single day. Ollie's fresh recipes are developed by real chefs and backed by vet nutritionists. They're obsessed with making the best meals with the highest quality ingredients. From the moment you start your subscription, everything is tailored exactly to your pup. You defrost the portion, which happens really easily, and then you have this very cute pup tainer with a scoop that is so easy to take whatever you didn't use and isolate it from the rest of your food, unlike having this weird can that's just like open in your fridge. And with Ollie, you don't just get food. Through their app, you can actually check in on your dog's health with real vets. Just by uploading a picture, their team can check in with your dog's weight, digestion, teeth, and coat, because they're obsessed with making sure your pup is as healthy as can be. Get ready for both you and your pup to be obsessed. Head to ollie.com/culture, tell them all about your dog, and use code CULTURE to get 70% off your welcome kit when you subscribe today. Plus, they offer an obsession guarantee. If you're not completely obsessed, you'll get your money back. That's OLLIE.com/culture and enter code CULTURE to get 70% off your first box. Ollie, feed the obsession. Okay, for people who have not been part of camp, I think that some of these justifications are very difficult to understand. So some of our questions today are really about what makes camp into this precious experience that becomes like so important to protect. So let's start with a question that will take us to a different part of the country. This is from Jamie, and Melody's going to read it.
We are non-native New Englanders who now live in Boston. The summer camp culture here baffles me. I've lived in other East Coast states and in the Midwest, and this is the first time I have encountered summer camp as an identity. There is so much that goes into this. No one talks about how much these camps cost, but the quote-unquote right ones are exorbitant. Parents make sure to emphasize that their kids get real summer experiences, camping, hiking, swimming, etc. But these are all things that you can do and access for free and with relative ease in New England. And I do understand how special it can be to have time with kids and without parents, but also it is only certain kids who can access these types of camps. And for many kids, these camps take over their entire summer. Where did this culture in New England come from? Is it a holdover from boarding school scheduling? Is this what happens when lack of childcare and excessive generational wealth meet? Is it just another social signifier to put on a kid's college transcript, counselor at elite summer camp? Also, is my kid missing out if I just send them to regular old week-long camps?
So because you're from New England, I want to know, like, how did you understand what camp was when you were growing up?
I don't think I really thought about camp. It was just something that was inaccessible to me, and I didn't grow up in a wealthy community where like everyone was going to these fancy camps.
Yeah.
And so I don't know like the history of the camps of New England, but what I can say is I think if you're coming at this from a place of understanding and compassion, like how could someone send a child back to Camp Mystic, for instance, after what had happened? I mean, it is almost incomprehensible. But the justification that made the most sense to me was it came from this one mother who said, it is so important to me that my child have lifelong friendships, and this is where those are going to come from.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us worry about our children having deep ties over time. And she said, you know, it takes a village. This is their village. And they're going to learn all this stuff at that camp. Like the camp also taught them like table manners and stuff like that. They're going to learn all this stuff I can't teach them, right?
Yeah.
I mean, presumably you can teach them table manners. But like the sense of I need them to have a community and this is the community. That was the one thing that kind of resonated with me in terms of like, why would you do this crazy thing?
Yeah.
And so I imagine that that's a lot of what's going on is like, I'm giving you a network is, you know,
an adult word for it.
Charged word, right? But we could also call it friendships, community, you know, people who will, everyone would say about Mystic, well, this is where you're going to meet your college roommate.
Yep.
You know, you're going to carry this through.
Right. Which echoes a lot of conversations about like when you participate in Rush, whether it's at Bama or at a place like University of Texas, this is where you're going to meet like your bridesmaids and this is where you're going to meet your husband, right? Like essentially like this is where you're going to meet your network. The thing when I was going to camp, and even before that, let's say like in the 1960s, 1970s, I think that there was this strong sense of like kids need to be with nature, right? Like this anti-urbanism kind of, right? Like we need to give kids a chance to commune with nature, get kids out of your parents' hair specifically, even though I think like a lot of kids in these scenarios weren't necessarily from homes where both parents were working, but still, like, it's a lot just to have your kid present all the time. Whatever your class, it is a lot to have a kid present all the time during summer. And I think that the other thing we haven't talked about yet is that these camps are also almost always device-free spaces.
Yes.
Like no screens. So they're learning to be with each other in an unmediated way that I think parents really value right now too. So that's part of it. And like, and you know, have you heard like all the discussion about like give your kid a 90s summer? Do you know about this?
Oh, yeah.
Like being like a 90s mom, like basically kick your kids out the door and just like let them fend for themselves. It's essentially camp, right? Like camp is just a little bit more structured and presumably safe, but like it is a privilege to make your kid fend for themselves in this capacity.
100%. And I absolutely feel that as a parent, signing my kids up for a million camps.
Right.
It's like this will be screen-free time. That's what I'm paying for. Do not show my child any, like that's on my time they watch screens, not on your time. Right?
And it's also a hack for having to deal with all of the like week-long camp scheduling, which can be exhausting to figure all of that out. And like some of them end at different times. Like I've just watched all my friends have to deal with that sort of like, that jigsaw puzzle. And this is just like
my friends in LA call it producing summer.
Yes. And this is like one decision. You're like, you're going for a month.
Yeah.
And then also you get the time as parents alone, which is precious. Like you can understand why this becomes something that feels important. But I think what this question asker is also getting to is even the echelons of like the right camps and that sort of thing. Like if your kid isn't going to the right camp. And you did a little bit of like understanding that in terms of these different camps in the Hill Country. What did you find there?
I found that parents who were sending their kids to Mystic specifically they were interested in tradition and like carrying on tradition. And I think there was this idea of like Southern ladyhood.
Yep.
Tweety Eastland, who was the matriarch of the camp, everyone said she would teach you how to be a Southern lady. She would come to your cabin and read devotionals with you, and everyone wanted to be like her. And girls would follow her around the camp, and then there were all these stories about, and then these women would become adults and age, and Tweety's in her 70s now, and maybe somebody would get breast cancer and like Tweety would appear with the right thing to say, and someone's husband would die and Tweety would appear. She was like deeply in the lives of these women. And there's something about like they're creating a community that revolves around them, but they're doing so through like real sustained connection.
Yeah. And some of it, I think, is actual acts that she's doing, but some of it is also like almost like this mythical understanding of these camp leaders who love us, right? Who care about us, who cherish us, and who are not our parents.
Yes. And also there were all these incentives at Camp Mystic. Like you might be a cup girl, it was called.
Yeah, what is that? Can you explain this?
I can't know. But I know they're really big honors, especially cup girl, I think. To the extent where I've seen videos of people receiving cup girl and they're flipping out, right? They're so thrilled. Girls are like hugging, like running up to each other and jumping and hugging. And
is it like head girl in boarding school or something like similar to that?
It's like a deeply meaningful honor that the Eastlands bestow upon you. And also you're broken up into two teams, both of which, so there's a lot of like
Native American
appropriation here. Yes. So there's two tribes, and that creates an intense sense of loyalty to your tribe. All of it goes back to the Eastlands. There is a way in which they were cultivating a kind of loyalty so intense, and I think it is connected to these little honors that even after 27 girls perished at this camp, people will still say, I want my daughter to go to this camp.
I don't think you use the word cult, but you quote someone who uses the word cult. And that word has, legal implications. But I think we can identify that, like, some of the behaviors and the way that, like through ritual, through the longevity of the camp, through, like, generations, all of these things, it becomes something that, like, you become dedicated to the idea of the thing more than the thing itself.
Yeah. I mean, I think the Eastlands were genius at creating tradition and ritual, and often that was very self-serving. Like, oh, it's not traditional to have walkie-talkies in the cabins.
Right.
It's not, we can't have cell phones, even though that would have saved lives. It was also like very economically expedient not to change anything.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Well, and this gets to my, like, anger about my camp from when I was growing up being fancy now. I'm like, well, part of the thrill was that there were squirrels in the freaking bare bones bunkhouses where we, like, slept on tiny little mattresses on the ground, or like that the shower was just like disgusting. Like, part of it, that was part of the bonding, was how simple things were. And I'm sure too, like, when these campers talk about their memories, like, and having lived in Texas, trying to sleep at night with no air conditioning is a particular sort of memory, right? It is different from your everyday life. Like it underlines that this is a place where things are different.
I do think there was this sense of like walking into a fairy tale.
Yeah.
Like, is this real? Someone who taught there for many years, who was a counselor there, told me they would play this game. Like, is it real in here or is it real out there?
Yeah.
Cults do create relationships.
Totally.
You know? Like,
I think about this all the time. My best friends are from my sorority. Like they are mechanisms. And there's always, there's a fine line between a societal organization and a cult.
Yeah.
It's not as like clear as some people think. Right. And I think some of it is when wrongdoing happens, how do people react?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Next question is a little bit about money in these camps. This comes from Gabrielle.
Our family owned and operated summer camps, just another form of nepotism and a place where kids of rich families get away with stuff. I've gone to and worked at a lot of camps over the years, and I experienced this at a very wealthy family-owned camp, where I believe running the camp is inherited rather than a position earned. And the legacy families seem to get away with so much that non-legacy campers and staff can't or don't.
This is totally outside of my experience because like no one could fuck around. Like there was no misbehavior.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot in that question. I don't personally see any problem with having a family business and passing it on to your family.
Right.
This was a family business. But this idea of legacy organizations getting away with stuff other camps couldn't. I did talk to someone who ran a rival camp who was very sympathetic to what had happened at Mystic, but she said they're not accredited and we could never get away with that. Mystic was just so
They're not
embedded.
accredited?
They're not accredited. I'm not sure. I talked to the accreditation agency and it actually didn't sound like accreditation was – I'm not sure that would have changed anything is what I'm trying to say. But most camps aren't accredited. But she was like, they can get away with stuff we can't get away with. They're like deep inside the fiber of this town and this state. Everybody knows them. And that's part of the thing. Like no one questioned the idea. Like I think is a totally reasonable assumption that this camp that existed for 100 years without any deaths, that your child would be safe there.
Yeah. Right. There's a detail in the story, too, where one of the parents, I can't remember who, as he was driving from Houston, I believe, because his daughter was unaccounted for, he called Ted Cruz. Like,
yes. That was something that was so interesting to me, the way that these parents were powerful people. They know how to use the mechanisms of law and money to get what they want, right? They're not powerless, but they were unbelievably powerless in this situation. Yeah. And there was little they could do to convince Hunt to conduct its own investigation. Like there was this kind of small town Texas power structure that just like wasn't affected by the big Houston law firms. Yeah. And that was surprising to me.
Right. And this is this falls apart when it gets to the local level too.
Yes. Yes. I think the Eastlands were really genius at that level, right? Like they knew everybody in town.
Right.
When Dick Eastland underwent therapy for cancer and he lost his hair, like a bunch of people in town shaved their heads in order to show solidarity. Like these people were deeply, deeply loved. And it was just a completely different vibe than all of these parents who are lawyers and doctors and exist in this like world of rules and legal structure, right? It was just like very much about this is what we've always done. This has always worked. Everybody loves us.
Yeah. And that's part of the appeal, right, of the camp is that like it's this very local, like non-lawyer and doctorly, like it's not ostensibly a bourgeois organization.
Well, I think it is very bourgeois because all the other girls are lawyers and doctors' children.
No,
right?
totally, it is, but it's like cosplaying is not. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
right. We're not gonna have air conditioning. Yeah. We're going to swim in this like kind of dirty lake.
It is.
And,
this is the thing about the river is. It is not a good river. Like people, the way that people talk about like swimming in this river. Maybe it's just you swim in whatever river, like whatever body of water is your body of water becomes precious to you. But it just comparatively, it is not a nice body of water. I'm just going to say that.
I think that that's part of what's interesting, though, like the way people would talk about how beautiful it is.
Yes.
And it's like that, I call it in the piece, a strenuous, active, collective imagination. Like, I believe you.
Yes. Yes.
Right? But it's not obvious to you and me because we're not under the spell, but the spell is real.
The Culture Study Podcast is sponsored by Honeylove. So, Melody, we both got our new CrossFlex activity bra, not a sports bra, an activity bra in the mail. So, you wore yours this weekend while gardening. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, I wore it a couple of days while I was doing some yard work, and it really kept the boob sweat under control.
Yeah.
I just hate that feeling. Like, I get so frustrated when I'm doing yard work in general, and feeling just like damp makes it all worse. And
Yes.
it kept the boob sweat under control, and there was no under boob chafage.
Yes. Well, and gardening is such a perfect use case for this too, because I think so many sports bras can make you feel like you've just been just
Yeah.
absolutely sucked in, to the point, they're so intense that they give you lines and straps and they feel so tight around your rib cage. And you don't want that feeling when you're doing yard work, right? But you do need more support than a typical bra. And that's where the CrossFlex activity bra is fantastic. It's supportive without feeling too tight or stiff or suffocating. And it has an easy hook and eye back, so you don't have to wrestle it over your head like most sports bras. That's
Or
always
try to pull it off when you're sweaty.
That's the worst. The worst. And it has wireless support using cloud fuse bonding. So there's no poking or digging or pressure points. So if you find yourself reaching for a sports bra on a daily basis because of the support and coverage, but you want something that's actually comfortable and designed for all-day wear, check out the CrossFlex activity bra. Honeylove is now offering a crossover triple bra bundle. So if you want a full refresh on your top drawer, you get huge savings by buying 3 at once. So right now, treat yourself to the most advanced bras and shapewear on the market. Use our exclusive link to save 20% off Honeylove at honeylove.com/culture. After you check out, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them that we sent you. Experience the new standard in comfort and support with Honeylove. Today's episode is sponsored by Biologica. I turned 45 last week. I'm in my mid-40s. Somehow at 44, it wasn't quite mid-40s yet. But there's something about this age where some of the vibrancy leaves. And I've talked about this in other places before, but part of it is you're not sleeping necessarily all the way through the night. There's a little bit of brain fog. Sometimes you just feel a little bit alienated from yourself. And one thing that's actually really helped me, in addition to a nasal spray, is Biologica. Before Biologica, I seriously was trying to cobble together all of these different supplements that I'm supposed to be taking. It's just exhausting. I was like, why can't all of this just be very easy and also not 17 pills that kind of make me want to gag when I'm taking them all together and forgetting oh, I'm out of this one or I'm out of this one. That's just exhausting. The thing I like about Biologica is that it's a drinkable daily supplement and it goes well beyond a multivitamin. So there's comprehensive vitamins and mineral foundation, probiotics, electrolytes, clinically researched botanicals, all in one drink. And it tastes really great. It's like a slightly effervescent cranberry. I love it. And Biologica also has 3 formulas designed for different hormonal life stages. So you get to pick which one actually supports your body based on where you are right now. Head to biologica.com/culture to get started. Take their quick hormonal life stage quiz to find the formula that's right for you. And right now, subscribers can receive up to 32% off their purchase. Again, make sure to go to biologica.com/culture and get up to 32% off your first subscription order today. This next question gets to some of the parents thinking about the importance of camp, and this one comes from Kristen.
Right now, I'm thinking about how, as an adult, I'm really jealous of people who had that sleepaway camp, roughing it nature experience, because it seems like they have this way of life that's just lower stress or somehow more fluid than my own. I feel like the people I know who went to camp live more effortlessly than I do now, and I just ache for that effortlessness. I'm also already thinking about how I want my son to have that experience, even though he's only 5 and it's way too early to be worrying about sleepaway camp for him. But what's sort of wild to me is that I very much could have had that experience, but I was a deeply interior child who just hated the real day camp that I went to one summer and absolutely loved my arts and sciences day camp. If my parents had sent me to the sort of sleepaway camp that I'm now envious of, I know I would have been miserable. I don't know exactly what my question is beyond why do I feel this way? And what should I be thinking about for my son, even though I know it's years in the future?
I love our listeners. This is such a great question.
Yeah, I love this question. I don't know what to say, but I find it a very endearing question.
I think that like what I see in the first part, this like it seems like they move more effortlessly through life than I do. And she talks about like camp, roughing it, nature experience. Like at least when I think about a camp like Mystic, these places where you make friends, like what she's talking about is like you learned how to be with other people for long periods of time. You learn how to like socialize and how to network. And then that also offers entry, right? Like,
yeah, wherever you go, you're a Mystic girl, and you'll find even New York City. Like I talked to a bunch of Mystic girls in New York City, right? Like
yep.
You have that connection and that no one else can really ever understand.
Yep. And that,
but I also wonder, like, I do think people idealize these camp experiences so much.
Oh,
that
totally.
It's impossible. It's impossible to tease apart like what's real and what is you imposing some idea of camp over it.
Well, and what's fascinating to me is that there are certainly girls who had horrible times at these camps.
Yes.
Who were incredibly homesick, who felt excluded, who like were the only person of color, like maybe in the entire camp at the time that they were there, because it's not like they're explicitly an all-white camp, but it is a very, very, very white camp. What if they weren't Christian or like felt like they had different beliefs? There's just a lot of ways that you could have a bad time.
And there are some stories from early Mystic, like before the Eastlands. Well, Dick Eastland inherited the camp from his grandmother, but there, in the earlier iterations of Camp Mystic, there are stories of girls crying all night because they're homesick, and then the camp administrator will invite the parents to come. And the kid will get in the car and they'll drag the kid out at the last minute and the parents will drive away.
No.
And because it was like this sense of tough love, like you make it through a week. And then, of course, later that child is like, I'm so glad that happened because I went back for 13 years,
I will say that I write letters to like all my kids who goes to camp because I just remember how much like what a joyful experience that was. But I always have to remember that like when I was a counselor too, there were people who had a miserable time because it's not an experience that fits with their personality for whatever reason. There can be so many reasons for that. But
totally,
you can't like that dissent doesn't work with the narrative.
Yeah, I know. I talked to so many girls who were like, I would count the days to camp, and it was the entire year was just waiting for camp. And then I would talk to other people who were like, I mean, I liked camp, but I wasn't one of those girls.
Yeah,
and I was like, that's a type of girl.
Right.
It's a type of girl.
Camp girl. It's like horse girl, right? It's like a type of girl, 100%. The other thing that this is making me think of is you quote someone who went to Camp Mystic who wrote a Substack post, which as far as I can tell has now been deleted. Where she I went looking for it today, and there's part 1, but then part 2 is gone. But basically, she seems to reference, what does she say? Like, the whiteness encroaches so gradually that, like, you don't even notice it. Something to that effect.
Mm-hmm. That was Alexa Fleet, who was so useful to talk to because she's a Mystic alum who's just finished her sociology PhD, so she had a lot of thoughts.
And I'm sure. And I think that like this is the ease as well, right? Is that like you're operating in this space of whiteness where you can like no one's complaining that like there's tribes that you're a part of.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And she was really great about being like, it's true that this is a place where I was able to be my authentic self in a way that was very hard when I was surrounded by boys.
Yep.
And also, she called it a place where white supremacy is inherited gently.
Yeah.
I mean, this is networking. These are going to be the people you turn to in your professional and personal life, and they all look the same.
Yeah. So that's the other reason why camp might be a place where some people both like the ease of whiteness is desirable, but also when you look at it, you're like, but I don't, that also is also a space that wouldn't accept me, right? Or that my, like, I wouldn't feel accepted in, and it wouldn't. So I think that like, that duality, and this comes, you can talk about this with class, you could talk about it too with like, with sexuality, which doesn't seem to come up here, but certainly there are people who are lesbians who have gone to this camp, right? And so like, how does desire work in these spaces? And in religion as well, that there is this duality of wanting to be a part of it, but also feeling very uncomfortable with the hierarchy it suggests, if that makes sense.
Yes. And I think so much was just assumed at Mystic. It was a place that valued tradition. It wasn't a place that was like, what's next, right?
Yeah.
How can we change? How can we become more inclusive?
Yeah.
It was it was a place where the entire idea was we're going back in time.
Right. It's like Make America Camp again.
But not any real kind of history, right? Like just this invented history that we've created together.
Right. Okay, next question I love because it gets to, I think, the performances of girlhood and authentic self that we've been talking a little bit about this entire episode. This comes from Andrea.
I grew up going to a secular girls' overnight camp in the Midwest, not specifically Jewish, but largely attended by Jews, and was always shocked going to the reunion in the fall when I saw how different so many of the girls from the ritzier Chicago suburbs looked, dressed, acted at home versus at camp, like they were trying out being chill tomboys for the summer only. How much of these Texas camps are about getting out of the performing feminism grind and being rugged and chill, or how much femininity is still being performed every day at camp because of the status of these camps?
Yeah, what do you think of this?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this a little bit, but interestingly, I talked to someone who had been at the camp in the 70s, and she had been back recently, and she was disappointed because the camp she remembered was rugged. It was like girls in like torn jeans and like mud on their faces. And she was like, all the girls are wearing makeup and their hair looks perfect, right? There's like, girls have this pressure. I don't know. I don't want to make it sound like it's totally imposed from outside, but like girls are presenting more clean than they did in the 70s. There was less of this like tomboyish vibe. And she was sad about that.
Yeah.
But yes, certainly I think, and I think it's healthy. I think it's like great for a kid to go to camp and be like, I'm going to try to be someone else for a few weeks, right?
Yeah.
I do think there's a lot of that like play going on, and that's part of the reason people value it so much.
The opening image from your piece, and then like talking about this place where you could go away and where it's quiet and where it's safe and like pure, like there's this real sense of innocence and almost like purity, right? And this connected to some of this conversation about like the gentle inheritance of white supremacy, but it's like a place where where sex doesn't exist almost. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think there's this idea of like pure Texas girlhood, which isn't it isn't weak, right? Like it's about I think some of the people who felt left out at Mystic it was because they weren't like athletically superior, right? Like it was a camp where like they really valued strength and rowing and like who was the best at soccer or whatever.
Yeah.
Or
archery.
Soccer, but tennis.
Or
yes, exactly. Thank you. And maybe you felt left out if like your talents were quieter.
Yeah.
Or more artistic. But there was this idea that you're cut off from the corrupting world.
Yeah. Right. And I think this is where the like loose Christianity comes in too, right? Is that this is a place that's away from the corrupting forces of secular society. And there's one guy at the camp, and he's a good guy. He's like the dad guy. He's someone that everyone feels comfortable.
He's going to teach you to fish.
Yes, he's going to teach you to fish and not feel gross about like touching the fish, which is a story that everyone tells.
Yes.
In some ways, it's like, oh, this is like this lovely space where you're away from the performance desires of like the male gaze.
For real. I mean, that's a big part of it.
Yeah. But also like, I think like say like the understanding of what girlhood must be is also complicated. Like it's this very, very rooted in purity is how I see
Well,
it.
I mean, I did see an application for being a counselor there, and it's specifically, there's something on it that is about not being LGBTQ.
What?
Like,
Really?
yeah. I wish I could remember better, but yeah, specifically you had to like forswear those kinds of desires.
Yeah, and in these pictures, I should say, like of the campers, like the gender presentation is pretty normalized in terms of like
Yes.
like girls have long hair. It reminds me in some ways like of this very different like low-key understanding of at sororities you're not supposed to leave the house without having 2 of 3 done, and by that I mean your clothes, your face, and your hair. 2 of the 3 must be quote unquote done, like
Wow.
paid attention to in order to leave these houses. And this isn't every house, but this is like top houses at a lot of the major schools. But then at the same time, this particular like tomboyish understanding of what girlhood looks like reminds me too of the top tier houses at Alabama are not like, these are not TikTok girls who are in these fancy houses. They like
Interesting.
too much makeup is very garish. They do not look like they have had baby Botox. Like they're not on TikTok at all.
Wow.
And so there's this real understanding that like class is something, it's much more subtler performance and
yeah.
much subtler.
It's counter signaling.
Right.
Yeah.
And some of that I think could be something that you cultivate and hone at a camp like this one where you're simultaneously like being a tomboy but also learning table manners, right?
Yeah. You're getting off your horse and then winning best manners. And I do think there's something about being a Texas lady
Yes.
that is about
Yes.
excelling in all of those domains.
Totally. It's, yeah, which is different than Alabama, I think. So a Texas lady is like this combination of Laura Bush and like Ann Richards, right?
Yeah.
But not short hair like Ann Richards. But you could be a leader in that way. It's so interesting. Oh my God. Okay, last question. We're going to end on some safety stuff because I think this is really important for us to think about in closing. This comes from Tessa, and it's about how what happened at Camp Mystic changes so many parents' perspectives on camp. And Melody's going to read it.
I have sent my now 11-year-old son to various summer camps, ranging from 1 to 2 weeks since he was about 6. I prioritize spending his time and my money on camp specifically because it encourages independence and gives kids opportunities to take risks in ways that modern American parenting norms typically discourage. My question is, how do we evaluate risk, safety, and camp attendance in this light? The extremes are easy. Don't let the kids decide whether or not to evacuate in a flood scenario. Do let the kid decide whether or not to eat a snack before a long hike. But what about in the messy middle? How do we evaluate safety in this context?
I just keep thinking about all these other camps that are also along the river.
Yeah. I mean, I've obviously thought about this. I've struggled with this a lot,
Yeah.
writing this piece as a parent. First of all, I just want to say I don't think the parents of the 27 girls who died did anything wrong.
No.
And I say this because I've seen comments on Facebook that are like, you signed her up when she was born. You had 8 years to review the evacuation plan. All of us, we trust other people all the time. Like the
Right.
random camps I've sent my kids to, I'm not looking at the evacuation. They're like at some camp, like by a cemetery in someone's messy backyard, like making puppets, you know, like I don't know what the evacuation plan is. And, you know, I live in Iowa. There could be a tornado. Is anyone plan for that? No. Like, I think that a lot of it is just trust. We hope that there's like, under that, there's like basic legal underpinnings. But I don't think we can live in a world where we put on parents the responsibility of reading, 100 PDFs before you send your kid to camp to make sure it's not in a floodplain. The parents of, particularly Matthew Childress and other parents as well, of the girls whose lives were lost at Camp Mystic have been passing all of these very reasonable camp safety bills all across the country. So things like there have to be evacuation plans and people need to be licensed and have special training, et cetera. And I think that's all very healthy. But at the end of the day, I just think we live in a society where like you find a babysitter on care.com, right? You're taking a risk.
Yeah.
And it's something that we live with.
I think one of the things, or one of the reasons why we're seeing the reaction that we're seeing is that like Camp Mystic and other well-established camps like this, like they are institutions, right? And we are at this moment of really distrusting institutions. And this, something like this, it just like gives you more reason to distrust an institution. And what we see from the people who want it to continue to work is like, no, there's actually no reason to distrust this institution. This was an act of God. And you point this out in the piece so deftly that like there is a place in this messy middle where you're like, we don't have to have everyone, you know, read 27 PDFs before signing up their kids, but also there should have been such smarter thinking about what to do when this rain started, right? And the alerts that actually went out.
Yes. I guess I think that the situation at Mystic was so egregious that it is in that way particular to Mystic.
Right.
But you could easily, you know, point to examples of other camps that people say just got lucky, right? Like they just weren't hit as hard and they were also not prepared. It's obviously difficult to navigate, but I also think there was such a the particularity of Mystic was related to it being a camp that had existed for 100 years, was reliant on tradition, had no interest in rethinking anything that it was doing, and clearly wasn't like worried about the legal responsibility of being responsible for like 500 girls.
Right.
It seems to exist in this other world where we just all trust each other and things will be fine because they were fine previously. And so one of the things they would argue is like, well, there were other floods and it was fine.
Right.
Whereas from the parents' perspective, it's like there were other floods, so why didn't you put walkie-talkies in the cabin?
Right. Or there were other floods. And at another camp when they were trying to evacuate, that's when the kids died during evacuation.
Yes.
So
yes.
like that's not a solution either.
So what are we supposed to do? Yeah. But the fact remains that there were hours in which someone easily could have taken those little girls and walked them literally a 2-minute walk or less.
Yeah.
I think significantly less than 2 minutes up a hill or to a rec center. Like it was such a dereliction over such a long time span that it's almost hard to fathom. And everyone talks about that when they go to the camp. Oh, I can't believe how close they were to safety.
Yeah.
It was so close, you know. And so in that way, to me, it almost, maybe it should, but it almost doesn't generalize because it's so astounding.
What does this make you think, too, about our larger response to intensified weather events? Because I see similar conversations that happen around hurricanes and flooding that we recently had here in the Pacific Northwest and wildfires and evacuations there. Like when when all of the precautions happen or the forced evacuations happen, and then there's like this, well, it wasn't as bad as you guys said. Right? Instead of like, thank God that it wasn't as bad as you said.
And it'll be worse next time.
And maybe it'll be worse next time. But it does strike me again as this like simultaneous like trust and distrust in what people tell us to do, like in guidance, right? Like tradition here spoke louder than guidance, louder than safety.
Yeah, I don't think anyone was thinking about climate change.
No, it's been.
I don't think that was on the agenda. But you know, I was in LA for the fires. I had to leave because of the air quality, and it's been interesting to me how much like change really depends on the insurance industry, right? Like,
right.
It's like people make changes when those changes become like economically necessary.
Yeah. Well, and I think about this with camp, like to be insured, like there are certain things that you have to have in place to have insurance as a camp. And the insurance costs rise. But the thing about a camp like Camp Mystic is that they can absorb those rising insurance costs. Whereas other
Or
camps.
just not insure certain buildings. Yeah.
Really, they just didn't insure like buildings themselves instead of like the entire operation.
I've heard people speculate that. I don't have a definitive answer, but yeah.
Oof.
Because that's what the FEMA maps are for. They're for insurance purposes,
Right.
so people know how much you should pay.
I love that's what the FEMA map is for thinking about how much you should pay, not like actual safety.
But in terms of like what people are doing going forward, like the crazy thing is that for the first time, my own child is going to sleepaway camp this summer.
Wow.
My older child, and he's 12, and I did look at the FEMA map, and I had a friend's parent confirm it's not in the floodway, and that's all I did. I know that there's risk in this decision. I know it very well.
Right. But it's one of those things too where like there's more risk in like them being on the school bus every day, twice a day, all the time, right? Like statistically, and evaluating those risks is very hard. And I think just like parenthood right now just feels like so overburdened with risk calculation. It's so fatiguing.
Yeah. And so much of it is just a different kind of risk, a risk of being on a screen all day.
Yeah. And so I can empathize with these parents who are just like, I do still trust this organization. This is still a place that I want to send my kids. Allow me to make that decision.
Yeah.
So you spent 6 months reporting this story. What is the thing that's going to stick with you?
Oh, man. There's a little girl in the story whose sister was also at the camp. Her name is Gwen.
Yeah, God.
And her cabin is evacuated, and she walks by her sister's cabin and asks her counselor, "Can we get Ellen?" And the counselor says no. And she then goes into the rec center where they're on this, all the girls are stuffed onto these balconies, and it's terrifying. The rec center is swaying back and forth in the flood. And she's like, "Where's my sister? Where's my sister?" Her sister was swept away, and Gwen was going to have to live with that. The family has to live with that. And that's the story that kind of keeps me up at night, because how close, close Ellen was.
Yes.
And for Gwen to have just had to had that chance and then have it denied.
Yes.
That, and also there's a story in the piece about Matthew Childress, who ever since his daughter had been a newborn, he had given her 17 kisses, to keep her down for a nap.
Oh my gosh.
And then as she grew older, she didn't want 17 kisses, so he would just say 17, and she would say 17. This was like a deeply, deeply connected father and daughter. She was a counselor at the camp. I think she was 18. And after she drowned, which Matthew found out after like an agonizing couple of days, he went to the morgue and saw her and turned around, but then went back into the morgue and gave her 17 kisses and left. And, just moments like that, I think, little moments in interviews that so intensely encapsulated all of the horror. I mean, after writing all of this, I talked to, 5 families, and I was like, wait, there's 21 more families?
Yeah.
Like the scale of the suffering was like hard to fathom.
Yeah. Well, I want to compliment you again on the piece, which is like so many people have told me that like it has stuck with them in a way that a lot of journalism does not. And it certainly sticks with me. And I'm really grateful that we had this opportunity to like talk about Mystic and the girls who are there, and then also this larger apparatus of camp and how the families are moving forward. So I'm really grateful for your reporting, and I'm grateful for that you were here today.
I really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you so much for having me on. And I just also want to thank the parents who relived that experience
Yeah.
in order to talk to me. Like, that was not an easy thing to do. And then we had to go back to them for fact checking. And, everything in here that feels intensely is because they were willing to share it with me. So thank you to everyone who read it.
If people want to find more of your work on the internet, where can they find you?
They can go to New York Magazine, or they can go to carriehowley.com.
Thank you again for coming on. It was fantastic.
This has been great. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Culture Study Podcast. Today, paid subscribers got a bonus conversation between Melody and me about oversharing, specifically on the podcast, and how we think about what we share and do not share on the pod. So if you want to support the show and be sure to get that bonus content, head to patreon.com/culturestudy. It's $5 a month or $50 a year, and you'll get ad-free episodes, an exclusive advice time segment, and weekly discussion threads for each episode. Be sure to follow the show wherever you get your podcasts, because we have so many great episodes in the works, and I promise you don't want to miss any of them. Also, if you want to suggest a topic or ask a question about the culture that surrounds you, or submit a question for our subscriber-only advice time segment, go to our Google form at tinyurl.com/culturestudypod or check the show notes for a link. The Culture Study Podcast is produced by me, Anne Helen Peterson, and Melody Rowell. Our music is by Poddington Bear. You can find me on Instagram at Anne Helen Peterson and Melody at Melodious47.